emotional arguments rarely move the heads of state. If you're talking to heads of state, you don't go emotional.
Okay, you mean like at the African Union, for example?
Yeah, you go with policy, you go with evidence, and you don't take the whole thesis. The whole thesis of 300 pages that I wrote for my PhD. You must summarize it.
Yeah.
You must summarize it into 1 page or 2.
Yes.
And say what are the recommendations. Something that can be read by somebody flying between Johannesburg and Cape Town.
Yeah.
Is something that the head of states read. It's really understanding the policy-making process.
Okay.
When policy is being drafted or legislation is being drafted, there are stages that it goes through.
Yeah.
And the policy makers are not necessarily ministers, are not necessarily the president of the country. It is those ladies and gentlemen,
bureaucrats.
That work. Yeah, you call them bureaucrats. It's those bureaucrats that sits in the government offices that write the document. So you need to know who's going to write which document when, or if you have got ideas, who you must talk to say, here is an idea. Here is an idea that I think it can make a good policy.
Yeah.
Having read the Constitution, having read the plans of government, the medium-term strategy, development, budgets, all these things.
Yes, how it fits
then
in.
You can approach someone in a bureaucrat and say, look here, I've got this proposal. I've got this thing that I've been working on. I suppose you are working on policies, and you can consider this.
If you value cutting-edge research and want to hear more academics share their work, subscribe to the Solomon Atah Podcast. Hit a like, leave a comment, and help us grow this community. Your support makes it possible for more PhD scholars to share their insights with you. In today's episode, we sit down with Dr. Stanley Maphosa, a thought leader whose work sits at the intersection of social science, policy, and community development in shaping how we think about inclusive growth and civic participation. Dr. Maphosa brings insights from his extensive academic journey and his transformative roles in science, diplomacy, strategic partnerships, and development advocacy. Join us as we unpack what it takes to bridge research and real-world impact in Africa's evolving social and scientific landscape. Dr. Stanley Maphosa is a distinguished social scientist, lecturer, and science diplomat whose work spans development studies, anthropology, and community engagement across Africa. He holds a PhD in social sciences from the University of Fort Hare and has served in leadership roles with the Academy of Sciences of South Africa and academic institutions, including the University of Zululand and the University of Johannesburg. His expertise bridges research, policy, and public advocacy with deep commitment to empowering youth and advancing science-led development across the continent. The Solomon Atah Podcast with Dr. Maphosa starts now. Good morning, Doc, and welcome.
Good morning, Solomon, and thank you for having me and the listeners and followers of your podcast.
Thank you so much for being with us. I'm currently in Namibia at the moment. Where are you speaking to me from?
I'm speaking from the city of gold, Johannesburg. Oh. That's where I am located. Yeah.
Fantastic. I've spoken to a few academics from there. The one was saying to me, the city of gold is a very fantastic city. At least the weather that day was very good.
Yeah, the weather is good. It's a bit hot, a bit of some cold here and there, but no, we have a good weather today.
Okay, fantastic. Dr. Maphosa, what is the overarching area of your research? What was your PhD about?
I researched on youth participation in decision-making processes with a case study of Mogale City in Johannesburg, South Africa. This is really ensuring that youth are located in the decisions that are made by government, by society, rather than to be viewed as spectators or just beneficiaries of development, but to find a table as homogeneous as they are, to be able to contribute to the decisions that are made. And my findings were really that spaces are created, but youth are not well informed about those spaces. But also in those spaces, when youth participate, they participate as groups, not as individuals. And some of them that are politically connected get to participate more than those that are not politically connected. And those that are politically connected participate as a collective.
I see.
And support a particular,
Political
thought
agenda,
or particular decision or agenda,
yeah,
rather than really their own individual agendas. And therefore, those are some of the things that need to be improved so that youth don't just participate for tokenism, but they meaningfully participate in the decisions that affect them in this country and beyond.
Absolutely. I can imagine that that's a very interesting PhD, Dr. Maphosa. So let me put this follow-up question. To what extent does pursuing a PhD shape not just what you know, but who you become, particularly in relation to activism, politics, and public life?
Well, pursuing a PhD is quite interesting in the sense that it's the highest stage of study.
Yes.
And it's not about really passing like you do in first degrees where you get distinction and what. It's completing. It's discipline.
Okay.
That makes you a disciplined person that is able to complete your work, that is able to bring in new knowledge, that is able to tease out documents that you read and you synthesize them and you're able to read in between the line and what is missing, and be able also to engage people ethically through focus group discussions, through surveys, whatever methodology you put in. My methodology has mixed methods.
Yes.
So engaging people, engaging gatekeepers, brings in your ability to engage stakeholders, to engage individuals, to engage material, literature, to engage, society, and come up with something that really says, this is what the people are saying, without really putting in your own individual bias.
I see.
But enabling the process to speak for itself. So in other words, PhD makes you a specialist, makes you somebody who really has developed something new from what is there.
I see.
It's not something new that it never existed. It exists, but you have put it together and produced something new from your perspective and answering particular questions that maybe society is asking and you yourself have been asking for years. And you are saying these are the answers. And you put it out there for people to critique. For PhD, you get to be critiqued, internationally.
Absolutely. Yes.
Internationally, markers and reviewers and all those people, your own supervisor, engaging your material. And at the end, all those specialists agree that this person has done what is supposed to be done and therefore must be awarded the highest certificate called a PhD.
I can imagine it could be very intellectually stimulating, intellectually rewarding, and of course, very fulfilling. I'm looking for the word. I think I will come up with the word later on, but I can just imagine the whole intellectual reward that you get from just seeing how it all comes together.
Yes, it's quite a rewarding journey, while challenging at the same time, because you disappear a bit from the public, from your own family, and find yourself, immersed in books, in articles, in interviews, in surveys, in all these things. But when you come out strong. You come out, as you are saying, built in resilience, built in intellectual capacity, built in stakeholder engagement, built in policy,
Yes.
understanding policy and how you engage at that particular space.
Dr. Maphosa, you currently lead Gun-Free South Africa at a time when violence has become normalized in many communities. From a governance perspective, what does persistent gun violence reveal about state capacity, accountability, and the moral authority of the state in post-apartheid South Africa?
Yeah, as Gun-Free South Africa, we don't have the luxury of an office and the luxury of an armchair. We sit in Westbury, we sit in Tembisa, in Alex, and in Atlantis, in Mitchell's Plain, Hanover Park. And when you sit there, you will realize how quickly gun violence is becoming episodic. It is patterned. You'll talk to children, and children will tell you which streets are safe, and they will tell you which streets are controlled by who. They will tell you that there are guns at their home, and they'll also know that they are not even licensed. The parents will know how to track gunfire like weather. Teachers will also anticipate absenteeism after a weekend of shootings. And these are not just crime-related issues, but they are more than that. They are a governance indicator. It shows that the state has failed somehow, because a capable state needs to regulate the force tightly. It should know where the firearms are, especially firearms of police, firearms of security personnel, firearms of individuals that have registered for them. A capable state must also have a functioning, central firearms registry where it can document these things properly. And consequence management should also be one thing that is critical, to say when weapons go missing, the person that has been negligent of making the weapons go missing must face the music. It must also ensure that the civilians that are being licensed or have licensed guns do not make those guns move into the illegal market and become a pipeline of the legal market. When thousands of weapons or firearms leak, like we have been told in a few days, whether they are leaking from stockpiles of police or private security or civilian ownership, that is not a random action. It reflects that the state has some weaknesses that need to be addressed. And communities are aware. Communities are brilliant. Communities have indigenous knowledge. Communities are not stupid as people think they are. They know these things. They notice these things. For example, when a grandmother in Hanover Park feels less protected than somebody who's living in a wealthier suburb, the moral authority of the state weakens. Trust declines, and reporting declines, and cooperation also declines from the community. So those are the things that we see on a day-to-day basis, such that once trust declines, then governance becomes harder. We have seen over the years how the ruling party has gone down in terms of percentages. Those are some of the indicators that trust has declined and governance is getting harder, not only for the ruling party, because the opposition did not even get much. So it means everybody is saying, we don't trust these guys that are ruling because we are not safe. So gun violence is therefore not about criminality. It is about whether the institutions are disciplined enough to regulate it. and to regulate this lethal force in a constitutional democracy. We're in a constitutional democracy, and our constitutional court, which is the highest court in the land, declared that gun ownership is not a right; it is a privilege that is controlled or regulated under the law. So my work, therefore, as the executive director of Gun Free South Africa, focuses on strengthening systems such that systems protect society from gun violence. And we're not doing that through noise, but through reform, through evidence-based policy making, through accountability tracking.
Yeah, because that's where I was going. Yeah, with the
through community engagement. And, as I said, we spend our time in communities, and we are not just an armchair critic.
You have moved from from science diplomacy, where you are engaging the African Union, BRICS, and the TWAS into child rights and violence prevention leadership. How did your experience in continental science governance shape your approach to public policy advocacy and systems reforms in the social justice sector?
Maybe I would start off by saying, before science diplomacy, my very, very earliest career was in teaching. I started as a teacher.
Oh, okay.
For 10 years, primary, secondary, high school. And then I moved to social justice, working for World Vision. And then moving into science diplomacy was my third move.
I see.
After teaching and World Vision, where I worked under the Department of Science and Innovation in South Africa and handling science diplomacy across the world, as you have indicated. That space taught me one central principle, that systems determine outcomes. When we are engaging the African Union, BRICS, or National Academies of Science, policy influence requires evidence. It also requires patience and conscientious building, consensus building. So there must be evidence. What we were saying in science diplomacy was that problems have different levels.
Okay.
There are normal problems. There's something that we call normal problems. There's something that we call complex problems.
Yeah.
And there's something that we call wicked problems.
Okay. So there's three layers.
There's something called wicked problems. And gun violence is part of wicked problems. And the normal problems, sometimes you just solve on your own. You take decisions, or sometimes you ignore them. You continue like that, because they are normal problems. You can say everybody has them. Complex problems at a higher level, you ask somebody to come and help you. You seek for advice. You seek a counselor, something like that. But wicked problems are problems that are so stubborn, and therefore they need a different kind of approach. They need evidence to deal with them. They need patience. They need consensus. We need to be coming together as a society, discuss them, and agree. And sometimes we'll agree to disagree, but we must agree to certain facts based on evidence and the time that it takes to be able to answer them. So emotional arguments rarely move the heads of state. If you're talking to heads of state, you don't move. You don't go emotional.
Okay, you mean like at the African Union, for example?
Yeah, you go with policy, you go with evidence, and you don't take the whole thesis. The whole thesis of 300 pages that I wrote for my PhD. You must summarize it.
Yeah.
You must summarize it into 1 page or 2.
Yes.
And say, what are the recommendations? Something that can be read by somebody flying between Johannesburg and Cape Town. is something that the head of states read. It doesn't read the whole thesis. Some of our theses are rotting in the cupboards in universities.
That's why I created a podcast so that people can come and talk about their thesis, because most of the academics say this is sitting there.
They are sitting in cupboards. Some are in portals, in university portals. They are gathering dust. But policy briefs and the policy advices are smaller chunks of the bigger pie. And that's exactly what I learned at the Academy of Science and Science Diplomacy. And I apply the same architects now, in gun violence policing. Gun violence is not just policing, it is data systems. When people are doing record keeping of guns, something they are doing administrative work, yet it is work. It is serious work. It is serious policing.
But But so let me just see if this is a question. I just want us to look at how you link social science, science academy, to how, in broad strokes, how it then affects how you move policy. Maybe not specific to gun violence, but how are the mechanics of advancing policy? Because when you say heads of states don't read, you don't go to speak to heads of states emotionally, or you don't take the 300 page. I just want to see how your experience manages those contours of diplomacy and getting policy into the circles that it needs to be, considering that you are not the only one in that space as well with issues that needs this attention of heads of states.
It's really understanding the policy-making process.
Okay.
When policy is being drafted or legislation is being drafted, there are stages that it goes through.
Yeah.
And the policy makers are not necessarily ministers, are not necessarily the president of the country. It is those ladies and gentlemen,
bureaucrats.
That work. You call them bureaucrats. It's those bureaucrats that sits in the government offices that write the document. So you need to know who's going to write which document when, or if you have got ideas, who you must talk to say, here is an idea, here is an idea that I think it can make a good policy. Having read the Constitution, having read the plans of government, the medium-term strategy, development, budgets, all these things.
How it fits
then
in.
You can approach someone in a bureaucrat and say, look here, I've got this proposal. I've got this thing that I've been working on. I suppose you are working on policies, and you can consider this. And second, you attend also their meetings. Some meetings are called on a continuous basis. Some are called online, and you can listen online. And as you listen online, you throw in some questions there. Some intelligent questions that will make people identify with you and your organization and invite you then when such
for further engagement.
But also lobbying and writing a letter or going there and saying, I have this issue to present. Can I make a presentation to you? There's also submissions that are made. When a legislation is being developed, a call for submission is made, and many people don't respond to that. We respond to that. Whether it's here at country South Africa or wherever I've worked, we have responded to calls that have been put forward. And when you put a good submission, then you get to be invited. Come and explain
explain further. The
and you begin a journey of being trusted as an expert in the space.
That is where I want to stay with you, Dr. Maphosa, because often guess they can talk about the specifics that they are busy on. But then like you have broad experience, but I'm just saying there is actually some things to be learned from that process, like you've mentioned, lobbying, responding to proposals, and going to researching who is doing what, reading the constitution, reading the development plan. All of that requires some kind of skill. Can you stay on there a little bit and just talk about the expertise and the lessons and the challenges and the highlights that and what it requires to come out to get yourself, to get your advocacy or the thing you're advocating for recognized into policy? Because I think that would be very interesting.
It requires time.
Okay.
It requires your ability to read and synthesize and analyze. It requires stakeholder relationship management. It requires networking skills. It requires presentation skills. When you have an opportunity to just present for 5 minutes, what are you able to say within those 5 minutes that really captures what you want policymakers to know? It requires your ability to use media. And media is vast these days. This podcast is part of media. And there's still local media, community-based media, which speaks in local language, where you can go in and you find people hungry for content. And that's why they play music the whole day, because they are hungry for content. But if you go there and say, no, look here, let's produce this particular content for 30 minutes or for 15 minutes, they will appreciate that. And you use those spaces, get into the social media space as well. Social media is big. Social media is something that has been used a lot. So in organizations like Gun Free South Africa and others that I've worked in, there is a lot of emphasis in the use of social media, to an extent that you have a dedicated person that really sits the whole day to
monitor all the platforms and engage.
Monitor the sound bites, to answer relevantly when answers are needed.
And to provide insight.
Where ignoring is needed. But to ensure that really there is a presence within those spaces, because people spend most of their time in these gadgets called cell phones, including the policymakers, including the government officials, you can imagine how much of social media usage even some of the key political figures we know are using.
Yes, absolutely.
And therefore, if you think they will follow you in your office, then you're mistaken. So go where people are. Try to find out where are the people who can really hear my story. If you want to talk to young people, you go to TikTok, you go to Instagram. But if you want older people, professionals and others, Facebook and LinkedIn also is another space where you find them. So it's that synthesis, can I use that word? Synthesis and simplifying the complex science into simple language and even local language. Somebody said to me one day, if you are researching something and your grandmother doesn't understand what it is,
I like because that analogy.
Because of the big words that you are using, governance, outcomes, emotional, ideology, concepts. It may sound interesting to the academic, but your grandmother is hearing absolutely nothing.
Yes,
I was speaking. So simplifying that language and making it easier is the skill that is needed.
Absolutely. I spoke to another academic on this podcast, and she says to me that she had to translate she was working with a Swati-speaking colleague, and they had to translate their research into their various languages so that they can go and explain it to their communities, because they are working water purification space. So, and I find that to be very interesting. And then another academic says to me that he is now advocating that in order to be promoted, that he wishes that academic promotion, like in terms of at the university space, it will consider how much of the impact your research has created in your community as part of the criterion for promotion. So I think you are also saying almost the same thing.
Yep.
And I find that to be very, very fascinating. Let's talk about your funding power and civil society independence. Having mobilized over 50 million rands in science diplomacy and over 29 million rands in child rights programming, you understand the political economy of donor funding. How can civil society organizations secure large-scale funding while safeguarding their independence, especially when advocacy may challenge the state?
Yeah, I do understand the donor ecosystem, and I would like all civil society organizations that want to sustain their funding to understand that particular space very well. And obviously, there are spaces that are easier to fundraise than others.
Okay.
You know, you talked about the science diplomacy work I did and child rights work.
Yes.
It was much more friendlier than the gun violence space. Maybe people are afraid of guns. Maybe people are afraid of being associated with such, you know, tough advocacy work. Therefore, the funding is not as what it should be. I'm not saying it's not there. It's not as what it's supposed to be. Looking at the magnitude of the problem and everybody wanting this problem to be solved, and it can't be solved by water. It should be solved because there is funding that is available to make work to be done. But in answering that question, we need to diversify our funding streams.
Okay.
In my local language, they say a river does not get full just by luck. It is small streams that fill up the big river.
You can actually say it, Dr. Maphosa, you can actually say it, because I understand that some languages, when translated, does not hold the same meaning. So I think you can say it in whichever language it is. You can say it. I'm sure the audience, part of my audiences will understand it. I will not even put it on like a subtitle. No, I'll leave it like that. Because someone also says to me, Dr. Gavaza Maluleke from UCT in Cape Town, her episode is playing in March. She says to me, when you take a framework that says gender, the way of seeing, the lens that you are seeing is, and she says it's a Euro-American lens, that in her culture, she does not have the equivalent. So how does she see it now? So when the moment she puts on that framework, that lens, that means of seeing, she's no longer able to read what she wants to read or to sense what she needs to sense, because she's already blinded by a framework. So I think that I think that you are onto something here, Dr. Maphosa.
Yes. Yeah. Let me explain it further. It says umfula ugcwala ngezifudlana.
Okay.
A big river is full because of the streams that pour into it. Umfula ugcwala ngezifudlana. So what that simply means that we need to diversify our funding.
Yes.
And the crowd funding, proposal writing, donor relations, selling some merchandise, selling some skills, doing some consultancy, organizations turning themselves into consulting firms and having an arm that does consulting and bringing money through consultancy, strengthening partnerships with other organizations, because sometimes you may not need only real money, but sometimes you may need some goods in kind.
Yes.
Yeah, in kind. If somebody says, I'm going to give you a space to host your meetings for free,
yes,
it's already money.
Yes.
It's already money because you are no longer paying for the venue. If somebody says, I'm going to, help you with the fuel, something like that. I'm just giving examples. So partnerships in kind as well as cash. But the critical thing is really to strengthen also our governance systems and within the civil society space.
Yes.
They have the board to maintain oversight, and reliable board members to be in your board, to be able to maintain that fiduciary role. We need also to protect our independence through transparency and discipline, It doesn't necessarily mean that because we are looking for money, then our independence should be compromised. We should maintain it and guard it, and be clear that investing in the work that we do as civil society is investing into a bigger space of society, where sometimes government does not reach. There are some communities that really have never seen a policeman for years, have never seen a nurse for years, but there are civil society organizations there that are working.
Engaged, yes.
Yeah, they only see some of these people during election time. And after that, they disappear into the gleam and glam of the city and the beauty of the lights. And they leave the people there with civil society players who really attend to them and listen to them, and sometimes even give food parcels, and sometimes give counseling services for trauma and all those things that civil society has been doing. So it's also quite critical to showcase your work, to have an opportunity to share what you are doing,
what you've done. Yeah,
I believe there are people out there that are looking for people to fund. They will not dream them. They must know where they are, and we must always create opportunities like these ones to share what we do. And if there are opportunities to exhibit and stuff like that, we take those opportunities to be able to share and ensure that somebody has heard what you do, and whatever small amount is put. I'm going back to my proverb that says, whatever small amount is put, it makes a huge difference. And
absolutely,
if you make your own money in that way, then you will not be over dependent upon external donors. And when we talk of external donors, sometimes the government gets shaky to say some of these external donors are coming in with the external agendas.
Well, we've seen. I mean, it's been documented that those kinds of non-state actors. I've had academics comment on those kinds of scenarios on this podcast, where non-state actors become really powerful, and they threaten the legitimacy of the state in certain spheres, certain spaces as well. So it is documented, and of course John Pakin's right on this, So you are actually on the mark when you comment on this.
Yes, definitely. We begin to see some of those things beginning to manifest, because he who pays the piper plays the tune, But obviously, if we get our funding locally, and as many people see what you do, and they say, let's share
Yes.
this little that we have with you. Instead of having my lunch today, let me take my lunch to Gun Free South Africa. Instead of having my hair done, let me just put a duke and take my hair do money into Gun Free South Africa, because I see that these guys want to bring a change that will, in the long run, benefit me.
Absolutely.
That kind of funding is what we call diversified sources of funding, but also maintain your funders and report accurately,
Yes.
report in time,
Very important.
and ensure that you have what we call long-term funding, multi-year funding, so that you can plan better. Because if you don't have multi-year funding, you only plan for a year, or you only plan for 6 months. But multi-year funding then becomes much better. I think the states also need to come in as well, because most of the NGOs in South Africa are registered with the Department of Social Development. And the reports are sent there. I think the government just collects those figures and statistics and pretends it's their work. So I believe the state must fund, civil society organizations and support the work that we do on the ground.
Dr. Maphosa, I still have a couple of questions here for you, 2 more maybe.
Yes.
Pan-African governance reform and civic participation. So, as a senior research fellow at the Institute of Pan-African Thought and Conversation, you work on democratic governance and institutional reform. What structural reforms are necessary across African states to deepen civic participation beyond electoral democracy, particularly for young people?
Young people are the present and the future at the same time, put together.
Indeed.
And across the African states, democracy has just been reduced to elections. So when elections are happening, we think that's all that democracy is about. My take is that governance is daily, and young people must be heard, not only when they protest and ban schools and ban libraries and clinics. If they do that, if they feel that they will only be heard when they protest, then it's a sign of a structural weakness. So therefore, what do we need? We need participatory budgeting at local municipality level, right up to national level. The other thing that we need is youth advisory councils with real influence. And these youth advisory councils should not be people that are nominated because they sing a lot in a political party and they do a lot. But real people that really come in and get to be nominated or volunteer to serve other young people. We also need open data platforms that will track public spending. Public spending is our money, and therefore data platforms must be open enough for us to track and follow what our money is being used for. I know there is the Audit General, and in most of the African countries, there are auditors, but they come in at the far end. We would like to know on a continuous basis where our money is being spent. The other thing is really civic education.
Okay.
Civic education should be promoted and grounded in constitutional literacy. The Constitution must be taught from preschool to university. It must be taught everyone, using every language and every platform that can be available. But we also need participation, public participation which is the institutionalized public
Okay.
participation that is not tokenism, public participation that is not box ticking, something that's not symbolic, but really where community members participate fully. So in summary, I would say, therefore, democracy must move from the voting day to everyday governance, and must be able to say, this person, we elected them, but they are not delivering. So should we let them go, or should we capacitate them, or are we still going to vote them again? Because most of the African countries, we vote because of allegiance. Either my father used to be a member of this party, therefore I cannot leave it, or this party has got people of my tribe, or this party has got people of my race, or this party has got people of my region, or this party has got my family member or my friend. That does not work. That does not work at all.
As a social scientist, Dr. Maphosa, what have you observed emerge? And you've worked on the continent of Africa and perhaps interacted with colleagues from around the world. What have you seen emerged as an alternative, if I may use the word? Has democracy actually served the continent of Africa in the way that it is conjured up? And I now ask you this question after speaking to about 50 academics in the past 2 months. Anticipatory democracies is coming up, statecraft is coming up, term limit is coming up in my discussion. Professor Boniface Dulani discussed this on this podcast. This episode is coming up in April. Professor T.K. Powys at the African School of Governance in Rwanda discussed statecraft on this podcast and have thoughts around term limits. And Professor Nubong Gabila talked about how African Free Trade Areas Act, I'm not sure if I get the acronym correct, how integration is challenging because we can't compare it with the EU. Is democracy serving us as a social scientist? Is it serving the continent the way it ought to serve? And you have elections happening in some countries. The same people are winning the elections in and every day in, day out for various number of years, which brings into question term limits, various things, various dynamics across the continent. Has democracy as a governance form, is it serving the continent?
I would say not fully. I would say we should not throw out the baby and the water. The baby and the water together.
I'm laughing because you're not the first person to say this. You're not the first academic to say we shouldn't throw out the baby with the water.
Yeah, we should not throw the baby with the water.
Yeah.
There are times when democracy works. And as you are saying, there are times when we think we should relook at it. What that simply means in simple terms is that I think democracy was given to us as the African continent without much consultation and discussion, and then comparing it with what we already had, and then pick some elements from what we had, and also fuse it together with the democracy, so that it's an African democracy. It's a democracy that answers our context to an extent that if somebody really is doing their job and we are all happy, maybe there is nothing like that. We can't all be happy, or we are all really seeing progress in that person. Them going back for the second or even third term would not be a problem. because what we want is service delivery. What we want is whether people are getting what they are supposed to be getting from the government. Rather than saying we just want to change because we want to change, the election time has come, and we're changing everybody and everything. And there is no institutional memories for those that were there to hand over properly to those that are coming in and ensuring that the ship is not rocked. Because sometimes when somebody new comes, they want to be felt as well. They want to make changes as well. And some of those changes are necessary, you know. So, yes, let us continue to put everything in the vote. And when we put it into the vote democratically, we should be encouraging people to say it's not about just changing all the time.
I ask this question. Sorry. As a social scientist, I really just want to explore this. Maybe we're gonna finish up now. Yes. But if you look at Singapore, where their civil servants and politicians get paid the highest, they're some of the best well-paid politicians in the world. If you look at the Singaporean model, you look at the Chinese model, whereby before you become leader of the country, you've come from as far down as it's taken minimum 30, 40 years for you to be able to come to national leadership. And then when you compare that to what we have in the continent, you can see that the conversations around term limits, the conversation about anticipatory democracy, the conversation about anticipatory governance, the conversation around what has not worked is a relevant conversation, Dr. Maphosa?
Yes, it's a relevant conversation. You're putting it nicely. In my language again, I'll go back to that says, inkosi ngabantu. The king is a king because of the people. So it's not about individual interest and personal interest. Yeah. Say, come out of this position so that I also enter and benefit.
That's right. You know?
It's what are you bringing to this particular table? What is your experience? What have you done before? You know, yes. I also, in my other reading, I also read the Bible. And there's a story of a man called Joseph. I usually say before he became the second in command after Pharaoh, he got to be trained as a runner, was being sent to go and check his brothers. That was training. He got to be trained in the pit where his brothers put him. He got to be trained at Potiphar's house, being in charge of Potiphar's house and the temptation that came with that. He got to be trained in prison where he interpreted the dreams of the two guys, and one of them died and one of them forgot him. After all that training, he then rose to be the prime minister. We've got leaders that just mushroom from Norway, no history, no experience,
no credentials, no street credentials.
Because they sing a lot. They jump a lot in their political party, they shout a lot, they insult adults a lot. The next day they are kings. And we have a challenge there. And that's where democracy is problematic, because they were voted by certain people and they had the majority of votes, but surely they offer nothing.
Okay. Dr. Maphosa, final thoughts? And finally, maybe you want to talk to me a little bit about your future research, what you're busy on now, what areas of social science research are you busy on now? And final thoughts?
Yes, I continue to operate in that intersection of research and reality, where I understand governance architecture. I also sit with families that have been affected by gun violence, have buried their children. I repeat again, firearms do not fall from the sky. They are manufactured legally, licensed legally, stored legally. And I work within the continent such that we silence the guns together.
That's an
Africa,
SDG, isn't it? Like no, that's Agenda 63, isn't it?
It's Agenda 2063. It's part of
Yeah.
the Africa Agenda 2063. So let's silence the guns across the continent. And I work with the young people. My personal research as a senior researcher right now, I will be editing a book together with Dr. Banda Njabulo. Njabulo, I think she came to your podcast.
Yes, she was
We'll
on the
be
podcast.
editing a book about loss, grief, and mental health in Africa. So we are engaging some publishers, and we have seen some interest around that because I've got a story of grief, a personal story of grief myself, where in 2022, I lost my son who died of suicide, who succumbed in suicide. And I would like to tell my story in that book and educate other young people, parents, leaders, academia around the stigma that's associated with mental health and how we can be able to assist our young people. When we assist our young people, we are assisting Africa, assisting all of us, we're supporting all of us, and we will build a better future all around in all the things that I do. We'll pass the baton better to better leaders, and let's do that together, all of us.
Dr. Maphosa, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Solomon. I really appreciate your time and to all the listeners and viewers of the podcast.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. If you have benefited something from this episode, please subscribe, share, like, and comment. It helps the algorithm show this video to more people.